ben nu op weg naar de hoorzitting in het Europees Parlement over de digitale euro met allerlei experts uit de sector, zoals de bankensector, een aantal academici, om te vragen, vinden zij nou ook die digitale euro een oplossing op zoek naar een probleem? We gaan het ze vragen, ik ben benieuwd.
Michiel, Hoogeveen, please.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for the speakers for their elaboration on this hearing. And especially to Ignazio Angeloni, I very much liked what you said, and that's something that my group has been saying for quite some time now. Indeed, that cash is not going away. That's a myth. I mean, if you just look at other member states, indeed, than Sweden, and we see that that's not the case. On the strategic autonomy, we already have the instant payments regulation. We already have the European Payments Initiative. It shows that Europe is a place for innovation and that we can have that we can set up our own payment systems. So I think the digital euro is not something that's very relevant in that case. And indeed, that central bank digital currencies in countries where it is implemented has not been very successful. In China, for example, only 1.13, so 1.3. Has the uptake of the digital renminbi and financial inclusion. I totally agree. This is a non-existent argument. Now, on my questions, I wanted to ask questions to all the speakers, but since I'm only allowed to have two. The first one is to Marieke van Berkel. You talked about the holding limits and what this would mean for the banking sector and the potential outflows of deposits. Could you please elaborate on how the banking sector looks at this potential danger? Because I think this is very relevant also according to the holding limits and how, there's been lots of talk about gradually lifting these holding limits and how banks perceive this. And also to Ignazio Angeloni, you talked about the European Central Bank becoming the referee in a football game where it becomes one of the players. How do you look at the fact that the ECB will indeed start competing with its own members and how this role will look to be? And a final question to both of the speakers. We as Parliament, we have the power to reject this proposal. We believe, and especially my group, we believe it's a compromise that nobody really likes. I think that's clearly shown with the speakers today. We can reject this proposal because it's fundamentally flawed. How would your members respond if that would happen?
To the question that you asked me, how would you react if we would, how did you formulate that? Reject the proposal. Well, I don't think we should be unhappy if it was rejected. I would think that the reflection that's presently going on is a valuable one, but it's too early to take a decision on the launch. So we need more time, more study on the aspects that I addressed in my introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second question went to Mr. Angeloni.
Mrs. Van Berkel has said, the limit of 3,000 euros per holder is very tight. In principle, it should not create macroeconomic problems, but it can create problems for some lenders, for some banks, particularly those who serve the small depositors. That has many depositors for very small amount. For those banks, for some of those banks, and I'm thinking in particular those that are less stable or for which there are doubts, etc., for some of them there could be a danger, and there is contagion in the system. This is what happens in the banking sector. If one bank runs into trouble, then the next one is also at risk. So, starting from some of the small banks, there could be risks. There could be risk for others. Now, the other problem is that there is a trade-off. So, the tighter is the limit, and 3,000 is quite tight, the less user value there is for the instrument. Let me make a very concrete example. In this moment, I have in my pocket, in my digital wallet, 5 payment means. Okay, I have 2 debit cards, 2 credit cards, and 1 very innovative fintech, all of which are very efficient, all of which have holding limits and transaction limits which are quite high. Okay, if somebody comes to me and say, I offer you another card which has a limit of 3,000 euros. I mean, what's the value of that? I mean, I have to get another card, another password, I have to download an app, I have to learn the security provisions, etc. What's the point of having that? So there is a trade-off between the safeguards or stability that would suggest to have a lower limit and tighter limits and the user value of these things. So that's a fundamental problem. Now, in terms of the power to reject the proposal, this is not my territory, but let me say the following. My ideal world would be one in which the ECB continues to work with the industry, continues to do research, because the research is not really completed. I mean, there's more research to be done, as Mrs. Van Berkel has said, makes itself ready for the possibility to launch a digital euro in extreme condition, if there are problems in the payment system, but eventually does not launch a digital euro unless those very extreme conditions and dangerous conditions in the system materialize. So the central bank is ready to come to the rescue of the payment system if there is a need, but in normal condition should not launch a digital euro. That's my ideal world.